You know, I wrote this book largely because I had regrets of my own. I was at a point in my life where, to my surprise, I had room to look back. And when I look back, there were some things that I wish I had not done. There were some things that I wish I had done. And as I reflected on that, I very sheepishly started talking to people about it. And I got a strange response, because we're never supposed to talk about regret. And I found that when I actually talked about it, people leaned in. They wanted to discuss it. And for a writer, that's a very good sign. And then I looked at the research and realized that we really had profoundly misunderstood this emotion. And I thought it would be an interesting topic to explore and might yield some insights that would be useful to people.
Okay, so what are the biggest misunderstandings that you noticed?
I think one of the biggest misunderstandings is that regret is something that we should always avoid. We shouldn't think, we should avoid the negative, we should always be positive, we should never look backward, we should always look forward. Now that has a slightly more American cast, but I think that's penetrated the rest of the world. I mean, you have people in Scandinavia with tattoos that say no regrets. And so I think the biggest misunderstanding is that regret is inherently bad. The way to understand it better is that regret is unpleasant, there's no question about it, but regret clarifies what we value and it instructs us on how to do better in our lives. And if we take it seriously, don't ignore it, don't wallow in it, it can be a powerful force for personal transformation.
Okay. And when you wrote this book, you interviewed a lot of people with a lot of different regrets.
Right.
What are your key takeaways from that?
Well, I think the key so what I did, I collected regrets from all over the world. We now have a database of 20,000 regrets from people in over 110 countries. And what I found, what really surprised me, was how universal the regrets are. So if I were to open up the database on your computer here and show you a regret, I think that you would not be able to tell me, did this regret come from Sweden? Did it come from Portugal? Did it come from the United States? That's how universal they are. And what I found is that over and over again, people had the same 4 core regrets. There were regrets about what I call foundation regrets, which are regrets about not doing the work early in one's life and then paying the consequences later on. So not saving money, not taking care of your health. There are regrets about boldness, big category, which is if only I'd taken the chance. People find themselves at a juncture, they can play it safe or they can take the chance, and when they look back, they often don't regret taking the chance, but they do regret playing it too safe. There's moral regrets, if only I'd done the right thing, which is about, we had a lot of regrets about marital infidelity, about bullying, and then connection regrets, which are if only I'd reached out, which are about relationships that were intact or should have been intact, that come apart, and someone who wants to reach out, they don't reach out, and then they regret it.
Okay. And how can decision makers, for example CIOs, use regret to as a good thing in making their business successful?
So there are a lot of ways that CIOs and other business leaders can use regret. One of the most important things is that when we look at what people regret, we understand what they value. And this is an extremely important point, and I didn't understand it immediately when I was doing the research. When people tell you what they regret the most, they're also telling you what they value the most. That's extremely important. So when we look at these 4 regrets, people are saying, this is what matters to me in my life. Foundation regrets are about stability. I need to have some basic stability in my life. Boldness regrets are about learning and growth. I want to do something and live and learn. Moral regrets are I want to be good. And connection regrets is I want to have love and affinity with other people. And when we look at those, that's what people want out of their life. And so if you're a leader, if this is what people want out of their lives, then why would they not want it out of the part of their lives where they're at work? And so in a weird way, this emotion that we try to avoid, this negative emotion, gives us clues about how to build cultures of meaning and significance and performance. Give people some stability, help them learn and grow, do the right thing, and build connections with people. And I think that in a weird way, this emotion is sitting right in front of us, teaching us an enormous amount about how to lead a good life on our own, but also how to build organizations in which people can do their best work and be their best self.
And how do you think that leaders can use it in the relationship with their employees?
Yeah, well, I think that one thing, and it requires some, at least a degree of boldness on the part of leaders, is that I think one of the most useful things that leaders can do is have a conversation with their team about a regret that they have. Now, you got to do it right. Again, what the research tells us is don't ignore your regret, don't wallow in it, but confront it. And so tell your team, here's something that I regret, here's what I learned from it, and here's what I'm going to do about it. And I think that that can be a catalyst for very productive conversations in the workplace.
Okay. Do you think that social media and other technical platforms can, can affect regret? Social media, of course, you can learn things from social media, but maybe you can feel more FOMO and that stuff.
Yeah. When it comes to social media and regret, I think that what it often does is that it stokes regret for the wrong things. That is, it's an engine of endless but ultimately meaningless social comparison. So you look at somebody and you say, wow, look how good they look. Wow, look how lovely their vacation is. And we then compare it to ourselves, not recognizing that maybe that in the moment before that photo was taken, they were just screaming at their spouse or their kid, that they took 48 photographs to find one good one. That, it's this very curated look at people's lives. And so what we know from a whole array of research is that endless social comparison makes us unhappy. But I don't find social media a positive force for most things, including a healthy use of regret.
Okay. Recently we published an article about metaverse, and that 2% or 160,000 Swedes can imagine living their whole lives in metaverse. Do you think that regrets can make people want to live their lives in totally new ways, in totally new dimensions in the future?
The question about regret in the metaverse is really, really interesting, and I'm not sure. But I'll give you a guess that in some ways the metaverse will be better for the healthy processing of regret than social media. And the reason is this. We can have, thanks to the metaverse, at some level, we can have dual identities. Now, the people you're talking about said they want to live their whole life in the metaverse. I think that's bonkers crazy, okay? But the idea that we can have multiple identities, that you have an identity in the metaverse and an identity that is separate in the regular world, I think that people could use the metaverse to explore things that they did regret. So it could be things like, I'm going to try to experiment with being, let's take a boldness regrets. I'm going to experiment with being bolder in the metaverse because the consequences might be less stark than they would in the regular world. And therefore I can sort of learn and experiment with that a little bit. Or I can, maybe I'm socially a little bit intimidated by having connections in the real world. I can begin to sharpen my connection skills in the metaverse because I regret not reaching out to people. So I can see the metaverse being a kind of a platform for people experimenting with identities and trying to address their regrets in a contained, limited, low-stakes way. They could be positive, way more positive than social media.
Okay. So finally, what is the most important thing for people to take with them in their lives when it comes to regrets?
So the most important thing people should know is that everybody has regrets. Everybody has regrets. It's the most common, one of the most common emotions of the human beings have. It's arguably the most common negative emotion that human beings have. And if you treat your regrets properly, once again, don't ignore them, don't wallow in them, but confront them. You can turn them into a positive force. You can begin by treating yourself with self-compassion, by looking at your regret and saying, treat yourself with kindness rather than contempt. You can disclose your regret to make sense of it, and you can try to draw a lesson from it. And when people take that systematic approach, regret makes people better. There's no question about it.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.